Today we're going to be going over a quick summary of the AWS security investigations with Amazon Detective video. If you'd like to watch the original video, I have provided a link for that below. AWS Detective is a new service that makes it easier to analyze, investigate, and quickly identify root cause of potential security issues by decreasing complexity and increasing efficiency of security investigations. Detective supports data collection from AWS CloudTrail management events, Amazon VPC flow logs, and Amazon Guard Duty. When AWS Detective is enabled, these sources are automatically ingested for all enrolled accounts, and data begins to be processed immediately. Detective does not require that CloudTrail or VPC flow logs be enabled in any of the member accounts, but it does require Guard Duty to be enabled for all enrolled accounts. Detective is used in combination with other security services, and the Detective console is integrated with Amazon Guard Duty and AWS Security Hub console. Security Hub is used to collect security findings from Guard Duty and other providers. Detective is then used to investigate Guard Duty findings or resources associated with findings from the other providers. You can also go directly from Guard Duty console to the Detective console when looking at security findings to understand more about them. The Detective console can also be accessed directly to research information about AWS resources, such as roles, users, accounts, and EC2 instances, and to understand interactions with other entities such as IP addresses. When Detective is enabled using an admin account, a security behavior graph is created to store your organization's extracted login details for your account. The admin account can invite member accounts, and they will send login information directly to the security behavior graph for the designated admin account. This allows the admin account to conduct analysis on all enrolled accounts at the same time. It's important to note that Detective is a regional service, which means you'll need to enable Detective in any region with workloads you wish to monitor. Detective is backed by a graph-based data store where the data ingested is processed, aggregated, and mapped to a predetermined model, which is stored for a year within Amazon Detective. This is a sample subgraph that you may see within your overall security pivot graph. Here we have specific relationships that define how entities within the graph are related, and each entity has its own set of features which enables the display of additional information. Within the security behavior graph, Amazon Detective has 9 supported entities, which include Guard Duty findings, IAM-related entities such as AWS users, AWS roles, federated users, role sessions, user agents, IP addresses, EC2 instances, and accounts. Now let's look at 3 different use cases for Detective within an organization. The first is an alert analyst is able to use Detective to conduct triage of Guard Duty findings, and an incident responder is able to use Detective to quickly scope incidents in both entity and time dimensions by easily pivoting among resources and exploring behavior in peripheral time windows. Additionally, you can have your threat intelligence team engaging in beginning threat hunting activities, and they can use Detective to analyze traffic communicating with IP addresses and immediately check which EC2 instances had contact and how much data was exchanged. The process shown below allows Detective to reduce complexity for the investigators by automatically adjusting login data, processing and organizing that data, and by making it easily accessible to users. Some relevant examples of the previously mentioned process can help answer common questions focused around what an IAM user has done with a specific IAM role. These questions may originate as part of an auditing process or as a response to a security finding. Here we have an example of how Detective makes investigative work easier and more efficient. If someone were to do an IAM entity analysis using CloudTrail, they would have to manually collect those records within CloudTrail and parse them for a few key values. On the other hand, Detective makes this analysis much easier because it is able to collect that same information automatically and then map it to the predetermined model. Detective allows you to get more information through the use of their search feature that is available both after an event has occurred or live if needed. Detective can also help answer questions related to VPC flow regarding IP addresses. Below are a list of few commonly asked questions. An example might have to do with when and for how long an IP address has been able to communicate with your infrastructure. Here we have an example of an IP address connected to an EC2 instance. On that relationship, Detective is able to store relevant information such as the ports with which the IP address communicated with and how much volume was exchanged on each port. Now let's run through an example investigation with Amazon Detective. This investigation was kicked off by the support email below that is asking for a higher vCPU limit, but it was not initiated by the account owner. To begin the investigation, we open up AWS Security Hub to look for recent guard duty findings that may indicate suspicious behavior. Below we see several SSH brute force findings across multiple instances. When we select the first finding, we see that it was created and updated, and it shows us that that particular EC2 instance has been a target of multiple SSH brute forces over that time period. From the previous slide, we are able to click a link at the bottom that takes us directly to the Amazon Detective console. Here we can see some finding details that the specific finding, which includes the finding time, that basically tells us the scope time set by the Amazon Detective. As we explore the Detective console further, we are able to see more detailed information, which includes findings associated with the EC2 instance, the overall VPC flow volume, and the traffic that is responsible for this specific finding. If we click on any of the IP addresses from the previous slide, we are able to look into additional details regarding that specific IP address. Here we can also see that there have been previous API calls from the IP address we selected. Now we want to determine the full scope of activity that may be related to this IP address. We want to find out which user or role this IP address utilized and whether there was any other suspicious activity coming from this entity. We can do all of this by going over to the Resource Interaction tab below. Some additional information that Detective provides are things like additional observed activity by other IP addresses, successful and failed calls, and observed geolocations. Today we learned about how you can use Amazon Detective to carry out investigations more quickly and efficiently, and we also went through an example walkthrough of what an investigation might look like using Amazon Detective. Now, take a few seconds to review these 5 questions and pause the video if you have to. In the next slide, I will provide the answer to all the questions and see if you get them right. Thank you for watching this quick overview of the security investigations with Amazon Detective video. Once again, I've provided a link to the original video for your convenience.